Thank you for joining me for what I'm more or less calling my story/spoiler run through Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. This is your warning that from this point forward, this video and all of the videos in this series are full of spoilers and speculation for the complete story in Rebirth, so everything we're given in-game. It will be looking at ideas and elements from Remake as well as the original Final Fantasy VII, start to finish, so including beyond where we are in the story, the whole story start to finish of OG7. It will be incorporating ideas and plot elements from the books, On the Way to a Smile, The Kids Are All Right, Tale of Two Pasts. It will probably come up once or twice discussing Advent Children, the movie, and I will give you fair warning, it is such a convoluted story. And going back through it, for how many times I've watched other people play, I've watched my play, I've recorded these videos, as many times as I've gone through it, there's always new ideas and thoughts that I have while doing stuff, so you'll see little interruptions occasionally throughout the video, like this! And those are just, during the editing process, something I forgot to mention. I came in and thought of it, and so added it in after fact. So if those are annoying, sorry, but it is what it is. So I want these to generate discussion. I want to hear your thoughts, so please join me in the comments. Tell me things that maybe I missed. If you see something you missed, let me know. If you think I'm wrong about something, please. If you think I'm going off into crazy town, if you think I'm on the right track, great, let's talk about it. Maybe discussion will raise some more ideas. Anyway, without further ado, thank you for joining me. I love this game. Hopefully you do too, so let's get into it. And finishing off chapter 10 here, so not really a reason to stop. Let's just get right on into it until I need to take a break for a minute. So let's just go.
We're here. Brought you as far as I could. Hope y'all don't mind walking.
Could have pushed us out with parachutes, I suppose.
What
but
about the next time we need a lift?
Send up a signal. Just make sure I got room to land. Happy trails to you.
The Veil's this way.
And the onslaught of the young Nanaki boys.
Guys, it's me! I'm back!
Nanaki?
I can't believe it. It really is you.
I do love Barrett's reaction. He's like, what the hell?
Whoa.
Now, why don't you go pay your respects to fellow Bugenhagen? Come on! You can let them through. They're good people. I promise. After all, they're the reason I'm here.
What in the hell was that? Hey guys, it's me. Who?
He's such a softie.
Real quick.
I do like watching Kate's reaction here,
An airship dropped
having
these on us
seen
this morning.
Reeve
Wanted
updating
posters
these.
of the terrorists who bombed those reactors. But I think we can say you had nothing to do with all that. Even if Nanaki hadn't vouched for you, it's obvious.
Now don't you look pleased with yourself.
Welcome to the sanctum of planetology, Cosmo Canyon.
Okay.
That windmill generates energy.
You see that wanted poster? Pictures look nothing like us.
Must be that way for a reason.
Gotta keep on our toes.
There he is.
I was born and raised here, in this canyon. I was to become a watcher of the Veil like those before me, until I was taken by Shinra.
Which, again, according to the timeline I've got, at least, was about a year before we found him.
I plan to serve my village once more. I appreciate all that you've done for me. Thank you.
We're really gonna miss you, Red.
Oh, don't say that. You're only making this harder. I mean, I wish we had more time, but this is my duty.
I suppose it was your duty to act the old man.
I wanted you to treat me as an equal, not a dog.
Nanaki! Is that you, my boy?
Coming!
So...
Now watch
is
with
that
me here.
goodbye?
I want to say,
Nah,
I don't think
I'm
he
sure we'll see
he
you
refers to
around again.
Bugenhagen as
The
Grandpa
real
in
question
this
is,
version at
why'd
all.
we come here? To learn the secrets of planetology. Come on.
Can't
Unless
forget
it's in an
that
obscure bit of
material.
dialogue that I missed somewhere, I'll, if I see it, I will definitely put it in here. But time for a wee cat nap.
I'm gonna steal some shot-eye, if you don't mind.
Then we can see the sights.
Which, as always, begs the question: how direct and how frequent is Reeves' control over Kate Sith?
Our very souls.
I know I've mentioned it either in these videos or in my main one, the main playthrough. You know, I mean, Reeves got daily duties. He's a director of a department of Shinra that, you know, urban development, and plates were dropped, and chaos ensued, and some sort of, you know, weather weapon that they're saying Avalanche has. You know, I mean, there's damage to Midgar. Reeves, a busy guy right now, still controlling the cat. So it's always a question of how much autonomy the Kate Sith doll has. Obviously, Reeve would have full access to the information coming in. I imagine at the very least he's always got an earpiece or something so he can listen in, and then if he needs to take direct control, he could. But probably a lot of the time it's operating under AI. Is there some form of life going on there? I don't know. I mean, we have Chadley, so we know there's some form of artificial intelligence life available in this world. So I don't remember where I'm supposed to go. I'm a little bit lost. There we go. Yeah, so I don't know how independent the Kate Sith doll is.
Lift your gaze to the heavens, since time and...
So I think, and I'm gonna verify this, because that spot right there that just looks so different. I've always kind of wondered if that's where the Bugey are. You can't really get a good sense of where that is on this map. So when we get down in the cave, I want to verify. But I mean, look at it. It is so different than everything else around it. I wonder.
Oh, these are the friends I was talking about.
Thank you for looking after Nanaki. My name is Bugenhagen. I teach planetology here in the canyon. One could say I know a thing or two about our world.
A thing or two? I doubt there's a thing or two you don't know about it.
Well, it might seem that way to a child like yourself.
I'm not a child anymore. I'm 48.
40 what?
Nanaki here has a long life ahead of him. In human terms, I would say he's about 15 or 16 years old.
That's more than old enough. I can protect our Vale and everyone in it. Which is more than I can say for my good-for-nothing father.
Oh, speaking of the members of our little community, have you announced your return to one and all anarchy?
Not yet. Be right back.
But where are my manners? Please, come in and have a look around.
I still have no idea how Bugenhagen is on that ball of materia. Because he's too high up, like, and where he's bending is at that rope in his waist. So he's too high up to be sitting on it. But the length of his arms that you can occasionally see inside the sleeves indicate he's got, you know, his relatively humanoid proportions there. But he would be too tall to be standing on it, which means he could be kneeling on it, which just seems really absurdly awkward. Or there's some sort of seat. There's always the possibility that Bugenhagen lost his legs, and that's some sort of apparatus that, you know, is just connecting him to it. I don't know. I've never seen anything to indicate what's going on under that robe for him attached to, sitting on, supported by whatever, with that floating ball of what appears to be a big damn ball of materia. If you got any idea, and if you're familiar with some lore, please put it in the comments, because I've been wondering about that for 20-something years now. Hello.
Oh, have my devices piqued your curiosity? They are essential to my studies of the planet.
Giant library. I love this place. Just the design, the wood, like, it's not my style of, if I had an office that big, but it does kind of have a little warm place in my heart. So I've got a wall behind me there that is stacked and lined. Almost the entire wall is nothing but books, some of which the shelves are double and triple stacked. This is my kind of place. Dead skin
While that may
cells.
appear to be little more than a glistening mineral at a glance, it is in fact a crystallized collection of our planet's memories.
Yes, we know. Don't drop your ball you're polishing there, buddy. Your
Don't you
rock.
worry, my dear. I'll find a way to...
A diagram for the 3D
We have
hollow
Professor
projector.
Gass to thank for a full half of the research materials archived here.
Oh? Professor Gast, you say? That's Aerith's dad. Anything else to say?
We have Professor Gass to thank for a full half of the research materials archived here.
Huh. Interesting. Mako. Stones. Old shot of Cosmo Canyon. That looks much more like original Cosmo Canyon. Just it's much more stunted. That looks like the version we got in OG. Or very, very close to it at least. This one seems much taller and has more architecture built around in it. That's Doc Sheeran's place. So as far as I can see, this is Doc Sheeran's clinic. You can't really make any detail about what's going on in the picture, though. But there's a lot there. And if anybody's familiar with what is going on or who some of these people might be, I'm very interested in finding this out. Because I'll be honest, when I first glanced past this, my original commentary here that I have since deleted was focusing on the person sitting on the bottom step there, because without zooming in like this, it looked like they might honestly just have like a torso and arms. I couldn't see what looks to be legs and knees there. And so my first thought was, is this Bugenhagen? Is he actually an amputee? You know, expanding on my earlier thoughts. And then when I finally got this, so I recorded a commentary about that, finally got this zoomed in picture up and looked at it, I was like, oh, no, he's got legs. Those are kneecaps. But really having the chance to zoom in and look at this photo, I want to know who these people are, because that would look to be Doc Sheeran in the middle. That would seem to make sense. And it looks like it's mostly kids, though, which is interesting in itself. The bottom left looks like a regular dog. I had to wonder, of course, is that, you know, one of Nanaki's species, you know, Nanaki himself before getting captured, or something going on. But it's really hard to tell, but it looks like it's probably just a regular dog. No idea what any of the kids there are doing. There's somebody on what looks to be a chocobo on the far right-hand side. Again, you really can't see much detail. He's certainly sitting on something. Could be a dark-colored chocobo. Certainly not a yellow one, though. Or it could just be a tree. I have no way of knowing. But yeah, that's my guess, is that it's a chocobo. But then there's someone standing to the left of Sheeran. Looks like a woman, just dressed normally. But the dude, I'm assuming, standing to our right of Dr. Sheeran in the doorway, looks like he's wearing possibly some greaves covering his shins. That's either a coat or some form of armor, and it's got a large, like a pauldron or some sort of guard up on his left side there. And either he or Sheeran is holding a big stick, a lance, some form of weapon. Really cannot tell, but I'm kind of interested in what is going on in this photo. So if anybody is familiar, if seeing these nice and close up rings a bell, could be something in one of the prequels, a character, especially that person to his right there. If this rings any bells, let me know. I don't know. I have looked and I cannot find anything that would shed light on this. Otherwise, I mean, could be something we'll find out about in part 3. Could be absolutely nothing but a random picture. But the fact that this is hanging up and it's a picture of Doc Sheeran's clinic, and it's an old black and white photo, so it's an old picture, presumably, hanging up on Bugenhagen's wall, makes me kind of wonder. I'm just curious. I want to know. Interesting.
Let's not be hasty. I'll show you.
No, don't be hasty.
Pretty sure I made that exact same joke on my regular playthrough. Now let's see.
You recognize that little scamp?
I didn't get a look at it
Well, you
before.
know that
So he doesn't
his
have the
childhood
13
was
tattoo,
quite a
obviously.
handful.
Does he? No. He's just got his tribal markings. So this is... Arguably, this should be read before he was captured. But it sure looks to me like he only has one eye. And my understanding was that before he was captured, he had both eyes. So I wonder if that, wherever I read that, because I don't remember reading, I did not directly read that. I don't think I saw someone else refer to it. And so either they were wrong, or whatever it was may have been wrong, or this is just an oversight, which would be really weird. But if he didn't lose it in Hojo's lab, then the question becomes, when did he lose his eye? And how? But I had thought that he had it when he went into the lab And that was another reason why he hated Hojo so much. So this hologram makes me doubt that version of events, but I'm not, because it was supposedly sourced from something official, I'm not ready to say outright that it's wrong. Just that I don't know.
You won't find a larger telescope on the planet. With it, you can see to the edge of the galaxy. There's no better view of the stars than through this scope. But the lens could do with some cleaning. My apologies. That again, huh?
Now we get condescending old man Bugenhagen incoming.
That's...
The planet crying out. A sorrowful dirge indeed. One I've heard all too often of late. This tubing allows us on the surface to hear the inner voice of the planet.
What we just heard didn't come from the planet, though. That was definitely the voice of a weapon.
You seem awfully sure of yourself, miss.
Because we saw them with our own eyes. 2 in the Corel and Gungaga reactors. They were loud and huge.
A fascinating account, were it true. However, such grand delusions could be a sign of Mako poisoning. Do see a doctor.
Excuse me?
Oh. Yes. That would do them some good. Judging from everything you've said, the 3 of you are unfamiliar with basic planetology. But it is never too late to learn. Please.
Stow the toot, or I will rip out those little bunny ear feathers from the back of your head, Bugenhagen.
I present to you our planetarium. While the Shinra building features the latest iteration, this particular one is my original design.
They did a great job with this, I gotta say.
Without further ado,
Bringing the original cinematic so far forward and making it look so gorgeous, and yet it is almost instant for instant, shot for shot, angle for angle, everything the way they did it in the original. They did such a great job with it.
Wow.
this is only the beginning.
A shooting star.
Planetology is not simply the study of the cosmos and the celestial bodies that dwell in it. Rather, it is a quest to comprehend the cyclical nature of life. Behold, the planet we call home. It was from its soil, so teeming with life, that mankind was born. And like all living things, man is fated to die. So, what happens next? The body withers and returns to the planet. But what of the mind, the spirit, the soul? Much like its former vessel, it too returns whence it came. To the great river where all intertwine and circle the planet without end. A cycle of continuous convergence and divergence. The ceaseless ebb and flow that is the Lifestream.
Now, one important point about the way the Lifestream operates in the lore that they give us is when you die and you return to the Lifestream, your will, your experiences, your consciousness, your everything, your soul, yourself is diffused into the Lifestream and no longer exists as its own independent entity. Which makes... I don't know if that facilitates or would run counter to when Aerith, for instance, brings up the images of Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse. Or when you hear Wedge's voice in the beginning of the Gears and Gambits proto-relic quest here. Because if your consciousness and your entire sense of self and everything about you is fully diffused into the Lifestream and rejoins the planet, those things arguably shouldn't exist anymore. Or just the fact that they have been diffused in there. It's like pouring a glass of water into a larger thing of water. You're never going to get all the drops of water you just pulled in back out again. They are mixed in and a part of the larger body of water now. So I'm not sure how that lore plays in with that. The biggest way the lore comes into play is at the very end of the FF7 story, is that Aerith is still... It's not an instantaneous thing, diffusing your will into the Lifestream. Aerith is still in possession of her own sense of self and her own identity and a purpose as of the storyline in On the Way to a Smile, which is the bridge between OG7 and Advent Children. And so her appearing there as an individual entity, she still has that. So maybe that answers the question that Biggs, Wedge, Jesse have not fully I don't know what word I'm looking for, but fully diffused into the Lifestream yet. So that's a very simple explanation for why that might still work. Sephiroth also, after the end of this story, and at the time of up until Advent Children even, has also not diffused into the Lifestream yet, and still has something left of his will, and he has a strong enough will that he is still able to act from that edge of joining the Lifestream. Because the other thing is, Sephiroth, part of Sephiroth is the Genova cells. And so I think that makes it harder for Sephiroth to join with the Lifestream, just like the Gaia that we're going to see in a little bit here. But Sephiroth is human, mostly. So arguably, if the human part of him was able to rejoin the Lifestream, or just the fact that he was born from the Lifestream, even though physically some of his cells came from Genova, the life part of him is still human and is still Sephiroth. So that may still allow him to fully diffuse in time into the Lifestream. I forget if there's mention of how that's going to work or not. And I'll go through it, and by the time we get to the end of this, I should have a better remembrance of what that entails. But the fact that it takes time before your will is released and diffused into the Lifestream, and the stronger the will, the longer, and if you want to hang on, you can for a time. The longer you can last. So this ultimate Aerith that you've heard me mention and the ultimate Sephiroth are those versions that are after the end of the OG storyline, that are in the Lifestream, and arguably thus have access to the multiple worlds that we're dealing with in this version of the story. So what he's saying there is like, yes, we all return to the Lifestream, but there is a process there, and at least 2 people are taking their damn sweet time with that process.
An apt name, though it is as much a reservoir as it is a stream, being the sum of the planet's spiritual energy. It is the very essence of our star, the blood coursing through its planetary veins. And if ever that
Look how far out
essence
this
were to
planet
be
is. This is
entirely
not,
depleted,
third rock from the sun here.
Of course, these are but basic principles of planetology.
So you're saying that Mako is spiritual energy, which we're using up?
Just so. Siphoned from the planet and processed for industry, that energy can no longer fulfill its true purpose. It is fated to fuel man's machinery, then fade away.
Okay, but does it actually fade away? I mean, what if it doesn't? What if it just returns to the Lifestream in a different form?
Remember Jessie's theory that started her down the path of planetology and to Avalanche was because of her dad, who she theorized was stuck, and that he couldn't get into the, essentially that he could diffuse into the Lifestream fully, but he wasn't able to be back in his body, so his soul, his spirit was sort of stuck, and thus if we used up the Mako, that would essentially ultimately end up using up her dad. And so I think that's related to what Tifa is asking here. And it's also, I mean, it's not oil. It's not but it's also not, wind or solar energy that are all but infinite and renewable just by the fact that they're always around. There is theoretically a finite amount of Mako in the Lifestream. That may be ginormously huge, but there is technically a finite amount of Mako in the Lifestream. So you could use it up if it is indeed used up and not returned or made available in some form, because the energy is being used in something. There's waste product of some sort being produced. The top plate was spitting out pollution down towards the bottom plate in Midgar. There are emissions of some sort in the Mako-powered machines that we've seen. So it's not an invalid question on Tifa's part, and I don't know that Bugenhagen has the right answer. I suspect he probably does, given the lore they give us, but if you're converting spiritual energy of the planet into a usable energy form, I mean, it's a valid question. What happens to that as it goes? What is left over at the end? Because it is and it isn't a physical resource. It has a spiritual component. What happens to that part?
Is that possible?
A novel theory, suggestive of a lack of understanding.
Excuse us for not being 1,000 years old and,
Time and education.
that's not how old he is.
You rang?
Please escort this young lady to our seminar room, would you?
Right this way. Okay.
Hey, can I come?
Bugenhagen is actually about 230 years old at this point. He was born in 1877. Excuse me, he's 130, not 230. Math, damn it. Yeah, so the timeline that I've got at least marks as Bugenhagen being born in 1877. So this is late '07, right? Yeah, we're still in late '07. So yeah, Bugenhagen's about 130 years old. I'll poke around a little bit before talking to him and pissing him off for no apparent reason. Now his reaction here is more than a little over the top, I think.
Got a question. The planet runs out of energy. It and everything on it dies, right?
Okay.
Yes.
Calm-ish.
Is there a way to avoid this? Like, making the spiritual energy stronger?
Why are you asking me such things?
Like, dude!
I'm sorry. I've come to realize that I'm somewhat stuck in the past. We've entered an era in which humanity exerts unprecedented influence over its environs.
True in the real world
And
as well.
both the planet and society evolve, so too must science. And yet it seems that I cannot. Perhaps I'm much too old of a dog to learn any new tricks. Was my explanation of planetology not to your liking? Perhaps a seminar would provide a more agreeable experience.
Thanks so much for taking fellow Bugenhagen instructed. Check out the storeroom when you have a chance.
Now, Storeroom has a couple of good things in it. So I'm going to take a peek in there real fast. So here we go with what should be, or is most likely, we assume to be, Seto and Red's mom, and then Red. We don't know his mom's name, as far as I know. Maybe it's no unknown lore, but that should be Nanaki down there. The only other, I mean, the painting is fairly old and worn down, so there's a possibility that that is, you know, that's Seto's dad, and that's little baby Seto there. But the simpler explanation is that's Seto and his wife, and then Nanaki. Just wondering if there's any more. We've seen that one elsewhere. Now, who is that? This is a newer picture. And so either that is Seto and Nanaki's mom when they were both young and somehow have a newer picture, or that's Nanaki and whoever his mate is someday far in the future. So, quick bit of lore that I'm getting secondhand because, again, I have not played this game. Apparently in Before Crisis, in one of the chapters 18 it says here, there is another living member of Red's species in the game, and her name is Dene. I don't know how to pronounce that. And she is assumed to be Red's mate in the future, and she is captured there. She and Red are on the way to do a ritual held in Cosmo Canyon, and that's around the time when Red was actually captured. And I don't know if those events are in the game or just alluded to. Again, haven't played. But the Turks were sent to capture a member of Red's species, and they were going to capture Dene, and Red, or Nanaki, I guess, is really what he would have been known by at that point, went to protect her, and she was put in a form of stasis of some sort for several years, which is why she's not in the active storyline now. And so presumably that is who is in the picture. So I think my earlier assumption that I mentioned here was that, you know, that the young cubs we see are Red and Dene, not Seto and his wife. And I think that fits with the Rebirth devs, or the whole remake project, really hinting at and indicating the broader lore of the world. And so giving us a sign that there is a young female of his species, just based on the pictures. They can give us that without going too much into it. And it's a nod to this other game and the people who might recognize it, but giving us a picture of young Nanaki's mom doesn't really do much for us. But giving us a picture of young Dene and young Nanaki saying, hey, there's another one out there, that is exactly what the devs would do for something like this. So I'm assuming my earlier guess was right, that that's who that is, and that her name is Dene, and she is from before Crisis. Because in the end of OG7, of course, we get Nanaki running with two cubs. And we see a version of that at the end of Remake for a split second. The question always was then, okay, we never ever see another member of his race. The only other one we see is his stoned father. So where did Nanaki find a mate? And there is lore. There is a story where he finds it. I'm not familiar with it. I need to look into it more directly. I don't know if it's part of a game. I think it is, but regardless, there is lore that has him finding a female, and thus there's an explanation for him having cubs. Well, that's ominous. Dude. The thing of human anatomy next to the tongs and the pincers and what could be saws on this table of work implements. Dude. Alright, I think this should be the last photo we have. And again, that should be Seto and his wife and little baby Nanaki down there, presumably. But we don't see that other one. The other female. Okay, I gotta take a little break here. I will meet you when we get to more condescending Cosmo Canyon people and Tifa's experience, and then we'll be heading down to the Torch, and then soon after that, heading into the Cave of the Key. So I'll see you in just a bit. Okay, let's see about going and getting our friends insulted by the Cosmo Canyon people.
Did you know none of the materia here is even real? And don't get me started on the planetologists. Bunch of blowhards in love with the sound of their own voice.
The materia is not real?
If people everywhere resolve,
is that just because it's not processed like the materia that Shinra would produce? So this is more in its natural form and thus not usable, maybe?
This village is lame.
I don't remember hearing that before, or even considering that idea. Because we know that in Bugenhagen's tower up there, they mentioned, you know, the stones that were there, and that, like, they were the type of thing that materia was, but it wasn't actually materia.
I've always been on the bigger side, but I've never been into physical stuff. Painting and poetry are more my thing. My old man, he used to say it was a waste, me spending all my time indoors.
Yeah, people say the same thing about video game
A
players.
big kid like me was using twice as much spiritual energy as other folks, and I was a burden on the planet. But he was wrong. That extra energy I received from the planet, it was a blessing. And after imbuing it with my compassion and intellect, I'll give it right back. No way is that a waste. It's just the opposite.
Indeed it is. Thank you for sharing.
Blessings of the planet be upon you.
Now, would anyone else like to share their story with the group?
So, my parents are no longer with us. Here, that is. But I believe they're still out there, on another plane. I've been reading a bunch of theories about this alternate world in the hope of going there someday. And over the course of my studies, I stumbled across a fascinating theory. It addressed the issue of what the Lifestream is, arguing that spiritual energy is actually a manifestation of our knowledge and memories. Like I said, it's a fascinating theory, but it's incomplete. What about our hopes and dreams? We remember those, don't we? So what if spiritual energy doesn't distinguish between our real, lived memories and the unrealized desires buried deep in our hearts? What if coming into contact with that energy allowed us to peer through the looking glass, so to speak? It's just an idea, but I hope to find the truth someday.
Well, isn't that splendid?
Blessings of the planet be upon you.
And may the bounty of the planet's knowledge be with you forevermore. Now then, would anyone else like to share their story? Don't be shy. Every contribution
I did not stop to listen to either of those, really. I know someone who would like to speak, and y'all better friggin' listen to her.
What about you, miss? You must have a story to share. Please.
Me? Okay. Where to begin? I fell into the Lifestream. I don't have words to describe it, except beautiful, maybe? It was a lot to take in. Feelings of kindness washed over me. Long-forgotten memories came flooding back. It was a warm, comforting place.
Again, I argued that Ultimate Aerith was the one guiding that moment.
A war between the planet and its enemies. And we can't let them win. We need the planet, and it needs us. We have to
That's
rise
what you
up,
call symbiosis.
fight back, defend it from this terrible threat. Thing is, I don't know how to do any of that. And I hoped you might have the answer.
Not when they don't believe there's a problem.
I'm not criticizing planetology or anything, and I'm not trying to scare anybody either. I just... You know... Never mind. This is all coming out wrong.
I think it came out just fine.
Please, do not be discouraged. Should you ever wish to try again, we would be more than happy to listen. What matters is that you keep challenging your beliefs. Stop doing that, and the answers will forever elude you.
You need to go tell Bugenhagen that, dude.
I think we should adjourn for the evening. The River of Lights is almost upon us, so let us head to the torch.
Hey, Tief. I think you did great.
See you at the festival.
I love that this was billed as a seminar, which maybe I don't know if there's a different understanding of that term, but to me that indicates a teaching session of some sort. You know, an instructor, a lecture, some imparting of information. This was more like Lifestreams Anonymous. You know, they come in, they tell, this is what I think, this was my experience. Oh, that's very lovely. Blessings upon you. It's not very seminar-y to me, but like I said, maybe there's a different understanding of that word or a translation difference. I don't know. Hello.
Ah, the River of Lights. Once a year, we gather the souls that have drifted to our veil and return them to the planet whence they came.
Once a year, they gather the souls that have drifted to the veil. I don't know what that means. I mean, think about that. I mean, because we'll see in a bit in this actual ceremony, they light little tea lights or sort of thing, and they float up on the little lanterns like it's Rapunzel's birthday. And then when they get far enough up into the sky, the lights turn Lifestream green and like actually dissipate into sparkles and stuff up in the sky. So it's not just a, you know, symbolic candle that they send off into, you know, into nowhere, and someone's got to clean it up a little while later, unless they're biodegradable. But literally, they're saying these are actual souls that have drifted into the veil. So is that little bits of the Lifestream that haven't made it back, you know, like actual like souls of dead people that didn't make it down into the Lifestream proper for some reason, and so have made their way to Cosmo Canyon for some reason? I mean, it would seem like Cosmo Canyon is a special place by itself for some reason. I mean, you build a giant telescope and you do all the research and do all the different things that are here because of the location. You don't, I mean, if it was just about altitude for a giant telescope, we got Mount Nebel, we got Fort Con, there's other giant mountains that could be used. So it seemed that Cosmo Canyon was probably built in this location for a possibly spiritual reason. And so that makes me wonder if something like this isn't part of it, like the loose souls, the loose bits of the Lifestream are drawn here. I don't remember ever hearing anything like this anywhere else in the lore. Certainly not in the game, but I don't remember even reading about this, anything like this. And this whole ceremony that we're about to see is based on this description right here. If you know anything about this, if you've read it or seen something else somewhere else, please let me know. But at first, when I heard this, I was like, dude, it's not literally such and such. You're lighting tea lights and they go off. And I'd forgotten that they quite literally dissipate into little puffs of Lifestream up in the sky. So I mean, it's more than just a symbolic thing that he's stating as if it were literal. Like, this literally is what's happening. I don't know. This one, it's such a little point, it's not really worth obsessing over. I might anyway a little bit. But, I don't know. It's weird.
I heartily encourage you to join us in this ceremony.
Just as each of us is a part of the planet is a part of us. Therefore, does it not follow that to heed the words of one's own heart is in essence to heed the words of our great mother? Thus do I urge you to hearken to that voice, that of the planet.
Assuming your list that the voice in your heart is in sync with the planet.
Hey, what time's the next session at again?
We just decided to stand there for a while until night actually fell. Alright, I forget all the conversations that are here. Let's just go through them real fast.
Pleasure talking to a mentor. said it was presumptuous of me to think I could save the planet. She decides her own fate, you see. As rain cleanses the skies, so too does she cleanse herself of filth. So what? We sit here and theorize while the planet rinses and repeats?
No, we fight, or nothing will change.
That's what I said.
If the planet's
I knew
asking
you'd
for your
see it
help.
my way, Merc. Thanks.
Wow, so many tourists. Must be quite the festival.
Look at them, gathered around the fire. Just like us that day. Me and Mom and Dad. If only we could do that again. Never mind. Just forget I said anything.
I'll lend an ear.
Whenever I think about my mom, my chest swells with so much pride, I feel like it'll burst. But when it comes to my dad, I just... Sorry, I can't. Still not ready.
Still kind of strikes me that there must have been a better way to handle the situation with his dad than what we get. I know they were
You return to the
trying to keep
planet?
with the original story, but
That has literally got to be the dumbest thing I have ever heard. Once you die, that's that.
Pretty much.
Thank you. So if you get that, you get why I live every day like it's my last.
interesting that you kind of take for granted that everybody believes the same thing about the Lifestream and, you know, the spiritual energy and whatnot. And it seems Yuffie, at least, we obviously don't know very many Wutaians directly. So I wonder if that's just not a part of the Wutai belief system, or if Yuffie, being a rebellious youth, doesn't ascribe to all the beliefs from her culture. So we don't get a whole lot of lore around Wutai yet. But you get a little bit of hints of it in the DLC for Remake, and you get a little bit here in Rebirth, not a whole lot. So some of this is going to be reliant on information from OG, and then a little bit of what I read online just to sort of expand and clarify. In the Wutai religion, which I think was originally supposed to be called Wutaya, the village and nation presumably are protected by the Chao, who is their sort of the head god, the one at the top. I'm not entirely certain here, who was the water god, who was either also known as Leviathan, or Leviathan may have just been like an avatar as a manifestation, not necessarily literally the Chao. But we've seen, the Dachau beans, and Yuffie has talked about climbing Mount Dachau and to get the beans as the reward. And I think Dachau Mountain was originally supposed to be like the 10-sided mountain or something like that. So I mean, there's a lot of lore that was left by the wayside that they didn't build in to the final story we got in OG7. Anyway. Underneath the Chao, then there are what's called the 5 mighty gods, and we saw those in OG7 in the pagoda climb when Yuffie was doing the climb up to fight her dad at the top. If you went back, it was totally optional. And the 5 mighty gods are the different layers. The warriors there either had their power. I was never entirely clear what that relationship was, but regardless, they were representative of them. So were the gods of power, speed, magic, war, and then the 5th one was her dad, was Omni, who had a little bit of everything. And so in OG7, Wutai lost the war. They didn't have this truce or the temporary ceasefire, whatever you want to call the current state of things between Shinra and Wutai. In OG7, Wutai lost, and it sort of messed with like the younger generation viewed it as a notch against the older generation and their faith and religion, and so the faith of Wutai was shaken by the fact that they lost the war. This Wutai in Rebirth, in this whole remake process, hasn't lost. They've essentially been holding their own against Shinra. So I imagine that the religious faith in Wutai is actually stronger now than it was perceived to be in OG7. I'm still curious how Yuffie's beliefs, how widespread they are in Wutai, if it really is a generational thing, or how much of that is Yuffie specific, because we also know she has a long-standing grudge against her dad. Some of which, a large part of which, is because of his role as a leader or the leader in Wutai. And the fact that they have been forced into this truce. And Yuffie is just not a fan of that, and she is just all down about the older generation. She views them as drunkards and worthless, and if the kids had been in charge, I'm sure she thinks that they would have won the war by now. But what we don't know is how Wutai beliefs feel about the afterlife, if there is one. If Yuffie certainly seems to think that the Lifestream is BS. So, and she seemed almost unfamiliar with the idea. Not just, well, this is what those weird Midgar people and the Shinrans think is all this BS about Lifestream. I know it's nothing like that. She's just like, what? This and this? Psh, no, nothing happens. Like, she seemed unfamiliar with the concept, which is a little weird. But, I guess we won't really know until we get to part 3, and hopefully we'll get a lot of information about Wutai, and we'll see more specifically with Yuffie and her family and how she relates to and compares to the rest of her culture. Really looking forward to that. I don't know. Where'd Kitty Cat go?
I can't wait to see what they've got planned. Some say we're like grains of sand on the beach of the universe. Fatalist idiots. Spend my whole life trying to prove I'm wrong, but sitting here looking up at the sky, you can't help feeling pretty minuscule.
All we are is dust in the wind, dude.
Did I sound as awkward as I felt?
You did wonderfully, Tifa.
You did good. Can't help it if
And
I
we'll
suck
never
at this
say
thing.
differently.
I got what you were saying.
I kinda wanted everyone to get it, though.
To hell with everyone.
Great advice. Thanks.
Okay.
Some carry a fire that rivals even this. Like
All right, not all the conversations were really worthwhile, but from a story perspective. Okay, here we go.
So, I'm an ancient. As in, a steward of the planet. One of those ancients. Or, to be more precise, the only ancient. For the most part, it's been a source of pain. I've been held against my will.
I wonder what
I've
the
been watched. I've been ignored.
percentage, if you will,
Even hated.
of her is
And
ancient.
it's been that way
Because I would
ever
doubt
since
that
I
if
was
Falna
little.
was a full blood,
My blood's been nothing but a curse.
that would be weird to have survived this long as a full-blooded
If I ever
ancient.
started to forget, something would remind me of what I was and bring me crashing back down to Earth. It was always the same. Time.
And that's
after
just having
time.
any blood of the ancients
I'd be
basically
shown a
qualifies
glimmer
you,
of hope,
and it's not something
only
that
to
gets
have it
diluted.
snatched away. I was never gonna be normal. That much was clear.
I think Aerith's life really has been abnormal. When she was an infant, her if you've played OG7, you may already know all this. When she was an infant, she was acquired by Shinra along with her mother, and her father, Professor Gas, was killed. And so she and Efalna were then taken to Shinra Tower. Efalna was then experimented on, had God knows how many, tests run on her and her blood and cells, and trying to get her information that she might know on the Promised Land. And Aerith was basically, I mean, we saw her room in Remake, where she spent almost her entire childhood there. So Aerith was born in 1985 in February. Yeah, so at roughly 3 weeks old, Aerith and Efalna were then confined to the Shinra building as test subjects. And it was in 1992? Yeah, 1992 was when Efalna and Aerith escaped. So she was 7 years old in the scene that we get later on at the train, for the train station, in her memory, and when she met Elmira. So for the first 7 years of her life, she was locked up in Shinra Tower and probably barely ever saw, the outside world, much less actual sunlight. Maybe she had access to windows somewhere in there, if depending on how much freedom they gave her, or walked her around the building perhaps. But you kind of get the impression she really didn't leave that room much beyond maybe meals or something. Maybe a little bit of exercise time. I mean, you literally can't live in one tiny room your entire life. But she obviously had a very confined existence for the first 7 years of her life, which is just horrifying. I mean, that's not really another word to describe it. It is sad and horrifying and just heartbreaking when you really think about it. And you got to imagine that her life was probably held hostage to Efalna's cooperation. So, yeah, the two of them. And I don't know that any testing was done on Aerith. I imagine some was done as the child. They probably took some samples and God knows what else. But it seems like the focus was mostly on Efalna as getting the knowledge they wanted from her and what they could learn from information about her and from her, etc. And Aerith, as a literal child who knew nothing beyond their building, really wasn't going to be much use beyond some skin, some tissue samples maybe at that point. So, and then from there she went to escape and adoption by Elmira, where she lived a decent life. But, I mean, early on, she knew she had the Turks out for her. And at the same time, the Turks were also looking out for her, because they made a deal with Elmira that she could keep Aerith as long as she let them know if she said anything weird, if she had any information. If she supplied them with info of anything untoward or abnormal about her that might show up. Any information on Promised Land for certain, and because, as Sung, I think, remarks at one point that it only works if they have her cooperation. And so capturing her at that young age would have just turned her rebellious and would have turned it against them. So they said, okay, well, let's make this work out. So that's why she was allowed to remain free, but never really go anywhere. I mean, she was confined to Midgar, certainly. Not a literal prisoner, but pretty damn near. So, yeah, I mean, so when she says that her birthright, her bloodline, really had not done much for her for most of her life, she's really not exaggerating in the slightest. It has caused almost every bad memory and bad thing that's ever happened to her has been because of that, from her mom and her own fate, etc. But
it's okay.
This is, I think, a moment of evolution for her.
So my blood's been a curse, but it's also been a blessing. It's brought some wonderful people into my life, friends that I love. And for once, I think I'm okay. Happy even. And all that pain feels worth it.
And it's a step towards her thinking at the end of the game. She's not there yet.
Even if I can't lead a normal life, there is one thing I can do. Return their kindness. And try to make the most of what I've been given.
So you don't necessarily appreciate that your first time through. Just from where she was to where this brings us to where she gets in the end with her thinking. It is telling, perhaps, that they do turn green Lifestreamy color.
There! It is time!
Which feels like there's more to it than just lighting the candles for Rapunzel's birthday here.
Pretty sappy, huh?
But in a good way.
Meant every word, though.
So, this is where you've been, Nanaki.
What's up?
There's something of great import I need to show you. And by that I mean all of you. Join me, would you? What did you all think of the River of Light? For whatever reason, the ceremony has drawn a number of tourists to the Vale as of late. When I ask for their impressions, they often speak of how beautiful it was. Some claim they were even moved to tears. It's an overwhelmingly positive reception, I'm happy to say. To stir the human soul is no small feat. And it pleases me to know that the River of Light possesses such power. Alas, my hopes to parlay their emotional response into a deeper intellectual curiosity. They have yet to be fulfilled. People are surrounded by cats, dogs, birds, and trees. They know that life is all around them, be it through the birth of a baby or the blooming of a flower. They bear constant witness to the blessed cycle of creation, yet they've no interest in the welfare of our planet. Forgive me for sharing my idle thoughts. Keeping them to myself is quite a challenge in my old age.
It's the circle of life, and it moves us all.
Today's experience was surely the will of the planet. May you cherish it always.
Well then, shall we proceed?
But I thought this door was...
sealed so that none may enter? Why, yes. And by my own
This is a much more
hand,
imposing seal idea than the original version of this door.
Try to undertake.
I do?
If you wish to prove yourself and become a Watcher of the Veil, that is. I presume you are prepared.
Yeah.
I will also require your assistance in carrying out the trial. Much danger awaits within, and I wish to ensure
The
its
globe
safety.
in the middle there?
When you're ready, simply say the word. Then off we go.
Alright, I'll be honest, I'm confused by this little globe on the door. Because it certainly looks like a little globe to me. And here's a zoomed in picture of just that globe, where it starts and stops on the door. As this goes by, this little bit here is the one and only part that looks anything like that. You see the 3 prongs right underneath Aerith, that sharper piece coming out south of that, and then the one at the very bottom of the screen there for a second. Sorry, this should have been on repeat. That's the only thing that looks like it might be that freeze frame. And so between that and as you watch this come around, I think it'll come around, I think it's actually the earlier part of this video. So this, by the way, this is slowed down to like 30% speed from the 3 clips where you can get a really decent look at Gaia during Bugenhagen's presentation. There are a couple places you can see more of it, but the whole globe is like spinning and doing gyrating, and it's really hard to tell where you are on it. This one at least stays relatively stable and rotates on a regular axis. So these bits seem to be the best representation of the globe. So now here, yeah, so see, look at this. This is, I mean, you can make the argument maybe. It's hard to say, to be honest. Since we don't get the whole globe on our map, it's very misrepresentation. But here's what gets me. That's Wutai. That peninsula that's spinning past, that's Wutai right there. And if you look at the little globe, and unfortunately it is damn near impossible to get a decent look at it because it's moving across the screen and there's things whirling past it and around it as the on the door lock, and then you see it spinning. It's really damn hard to try and get a decent view of it, for me at least. Somebody better in video capture might be able to do a better job, but as it spins past what would be the landmass here with Cosmo Canyon into up to Rocket Town and where Nibelheim and that whole continent there, as that part of that little gold globe spins past, the whole continent like runs much further west and sort of like scoops north, and like there's no Wutai. And it's not a small landmass. You can see as it comes around again, it's significantly disconnected. And it's a good-sized landmass. You have a hard time missing it. And so, and then you come around to the other side, and the grasslands comes out, and like the grassland comes much farther east and wraps around. It's like the side of the globe that has Wutai here. This whole half of the globe like doesn't exist. They just stretched the 2 land masses that we know about and we've seen, stretched them much closer to each other as if Wutai wasn't there. So I'm not entirely sure what that means. Unless this isn't Gaia. And the only other option I can think of for it is if that little globe there is actually a representation of the planet that the Bugey came from. Because the landmasses, that one little similarity of the 3 prongs and what could be the North Crater, etc., that could be it. It's weird because distortions of the map we get is flat. This is a globe. That's a tiny version, etc. There's all sorts of distortions happening, so it's hard to say. But if it's not Gaia, it could also make sense if that was the Bugey's planet, because we know it, was broken up, and some piece of it, we don't know how much physical bit, but at least the spirits of the Bugey came here. you could, if that's not Gaia, you could make the argument that it's their planet, since this is the door blocking off the remnants of their existence from the rest of Gaia. So, as a representation of their planet, it makes sense. Also makes perfect sense if that's Gaia, and I'm veering off into Crazy Town with this thought. But because that little bit seems so wildly out of proportion with what we see of Gaia and what it could be on what it might conform to on the map, because you look at the maps we get, there is no little three-prong thing there. Like, the north of Corel kind of goes up and is actually relatively smooth. There's no middle prong sticking out. It's only on this half-dead version that we see here at the end as it comes around here. So there's the North Crater, here's Midgar. Now as everything dries up, now you can maybe kind of see where that would be. But I dare you to find that representation of landmass on the map that we see in the game. Because you have to stretch your imagination to get anywhere with it. Because, I mean, this is much closer to this northern crater area on the map and in our explorable area. So I'm not convinced that it's Gaia. I'm not convinced it's not. But if the game devs said it's not Gaia, it wouldn't surprise me at all, and I would immediately jump to, okay, that's the Geese planet instead. I don't have another explanation because it's almost certainly a globe of some sort. I don't know how you could think it's anything else. But the land masses you see represented there do not seem to be in proportion to what we know of Gaia, and seem to be missing the Wutai continent entirely, which is weird. So, either way, something strange is going on with this, so I just wanted to bring it out and zoom in on it and just sort of show what I've got, but I don't have any real answers on it because it's just weird. Kind of makes me wonder what's on the other side of it then, because we saw it spinning.
Now we follow the cave where it leads.
As much as I love Gaia and FF7 and the world that we have available to us now, when you get down to it, this seems to be a really, really frickin' small planet. If you think honestly about the scale, unless there's a whole lot more of this planet we don't see, other land masses, and we don't get to wrap around it like you would on OG, you know, the little flat model map. You would go off one end of the world and you appear on the other side. Great.
When our village came under attack, my mother fought with courage, with honor. She faced the enemy and laid down her life to save us. My father, though, he turned tail and ran. He was a coward.
So then, you still haven't forgiven him?
Why would I?
I mean, have you ever given him a reason to, after the story you told him? Seriously.